There are two 10mm bolts that hold the tensioner in place, and I'm going to go ahead and remove those now. Okay, there are two things happening here with the tensioner that I want you to notice. You can definitely see where the plastic pad has worn out. You'll also notice that there's a large orifice here and only a small one here. What's happened is the chain has worn through this plastic pad and down to the little piston that provides pressure against the pad to tension the chain. Well, now that the plastic has worn all the way through, it can no longer build up oil pressure inside here and force the tensioner pad out against the chain. Also, you'll notice that the pad is worn down so much that the metal is starting to get grooved from the chain passing over the top of it, and that's where our noise is coming from. Okay, I've cleaned all the gasket surfaces and prepped them for our gasket material, spread silicone over our gasket surface, and now we're ready to install it. And actually, lucky for us, the Nissan engineers were kind and provided us with a couple of studs and alignment pins so that we can set this on there and then put our hardware in. Okay, I set it into place, and now there's still a small gap here, so I'm just going to give it a couple taps with this plastic handle on the pry bar. And there, it's seated into place when we're ready to install our hardware. Okay, now I'm just doing kind of my second stage of torquing. I went through and just seated them all down, and now I'm going to go through and do my crisscross pattern again just to make sure that all of them are snug. Okay, I'm ready to reinstall my motor mount now. You'll remember I had the engine jacked up a little higher to make it easier to work on, so I've dropped it back down into position. And you'll notice on this motor mount that it has this rubber little isolator grommet on it. And you just need to keep an eye on that and make sure it doesn't bind up as you're reinstalling. Okay, I've started all the bolts by hand now. And being larger bolts, I'm comfortable using air tools to install these. You just don't want to over tighten them as it is still going into aluminum. Okay, now that the motor mount is back in, we're going to go ahead and reinstall our cylinder head bracket. And once again, I'm going to start them by hand, and then I'll put them in with the air. And now we're ready to put our coolant reservoir back into place and reinstall our valve cover. Okay, I'm ready to reinstall my valve cover now. I purchased a gasket to put in here, but after inspecting this gasket, it's in great shape. There's nothing wrong with it. I'm going to go ahead and reinstall it. If it was a customer's car, I would always put a new gasket in, but being as it's my own personal rig, if it doesn't work, I have to fix it, so no harm done. Now, when I removed the valve cover and cleaned the gasket surface, I could see where the factory put extra silicone at. You can see a little seam put right where the cover's at, and then also they put a little bit in the corners right over where the distributor comes in, and it has a little hump there. So we're just going to re-silicone that and set our valve cover back into place. Okay, I've set my valve cover into place, and I've just taken all the screws, got them started, and just set them down, not applying any pressure to them. The factory wants you to tighten these down in a crisscross sequence, starting from the center and working your way out. That way you'll apply pressure to the center of the valve cover and then carry that pressure outwards, rather than applying pressure on the outer edges and working your way in and forming a problem. It could form a kind of a less amount of pressure in the center and cause a leak. Okay, I've tightened down my valve cover. Now I'm going to re-hook up my hoses. There's the PCV valve right here, the other vent hose. And then I'll put my spark plugs back in, and we'll be ready to start this bad boy up. Okay, we're ready to start it up now, and the likelihood is it'll probably have a little bit of clattering just until that tensioner fills up with oil and applies pressure to the chain. All right. All right, you'll notice there was a little bit of clatter just in the beginning, and now it sounds nice and quiet, right like it did from the factory. Looks like we solved our problem.